The housekeeper's son stayed at my place every weekend he had off from school. Out of respect for the years his mother had worked for my family, I never said a word about it. Then I came home one day to a keypad code that no longer worked and a note taped to the door. Freeloading dogs not allowed inside. I tore the note off, knocked until the door opened, and asked the housekeeper, "What is this about?" Her son was lounging on the sofa, one leg crossed over the other, and he didn't even bother hiding his irritation. "Can't you read? You're here every single day mooching off my house. Do you have any shame at all? Got nowhere to go? Then sleep on the street. God, I hate freeloading, much like you." I stared at him, baffled. The housekeeper hurried over and whispered to me, "Young Mr. Dickerson, I'm sorry. My son doesn't know I'm a housekeeper. He's got a bit of a young master attitude. He doesn't like living under the same roof as strangers."
Oh, right.
"Don't you still have that house out in the country? When my son comes to stay on weekends from now on, you should just go there." And with that, she shut the door in my face. I stood outside my own front door and quietly dialed the police. "Hello, someone has broken into my home and is occupying my property. Please send officers as soon as possible." I never imagined that I, the son of the wealthiest man in the city, would be called a freeloading dog to my face. In my own house, no less. 20 minutes after I called, a police cruiser pulled up in front of the mansion. 2 officers had barely stepped out of the car, hadn't even had a chance to ask about the break-in, when Aileen Chavez threw the door open in a panic. She half-jogged over to me, face drained of color. "Young Mr. Dickerson, what's going on? Why did you call the police?" I glanced at her and said nothing. One of the officers looked her up and down and asked, "Are you the person Mr. Dickerson reported for unlawful entry and occupying his residence?" The moment she heard that, Aileen panicked.
No.
"Officers, this is all a misunderstanding. I'm Mr. Dickerson's housekeeper. I take care of his meals, his home, his daily needs. My son's school is on break, so he came to stay for a couple of days. The smart lock was malfunctioning, and when the repairman came, the code got reset. That's all it was. Nobody is occupying anyone's house." She pointed back toward the front door and offered a placating smile.
See?
I came out to open it the moment I heard, didn't I? The officers looked at me, then at her, then back at me. "Mr. Dickerson, do you still want to pursue this?" I was about to answer when Aileen suddenly dropped her voice and leaned close to my ear, pleading, "Young Mr. Dickerson, can you please tell me what you're doing? Calvin's father died early. I raised that boy by myself, and it wasn't easy. He only just started college. He's at that age where vanity runs hot, and he never had enough love growing up, so his personality's a little extreme. If he found out his mother was just a housekeeper, he wouldn't be able to handle it. I only did it so he could feel a little better about himself. Please, for the sake of the 12 years I spent taking care of your parents, let it go, just this once." After that, she kept her word. Once my mother was gone, Aileen kept the household running like it had never lost its center, looking after me as though I were her own son. Then, starting last month, things changed. I came home one day and found Calvin James standing in my living room. I had no idea why he was there, but Aileen pulled me aside and whispered, "Young Mr. Dickerson, my son's got nowhere to go on weekends. It's been so long since I've seen him, I just figured he could come stay a couple days." I nodded and let it go. The house had plenty of rooms. Letting them spend some time together wasn't a big deal. But gradually, something started feeling off. A couple of days turned into every single weekend, like clockwork. Every Friday evening, Calvin showed up at my house. He wouldn't leave until Monday morning. At first, he just liked taking photos around the living room and posting them online, showing off to his classmates about the mansion he was living in. I could understand that. Everyone wants to look good in front of other people. What I couldn't understand was the way Calvin looked at me every time we crossed paths. Pure disgust, like I repulsed him. A few times, while I was sitting on the couch watching TV, he deliberately pinched his nose and complained at full volume. "God, this place is gorgeous. But why does it always reek of poverty?" I actually thought he'd smelled something off. I reminded Aileen to give the house a thorough cleaning, but Calvin only got worse. He started spraying disinfectant all over wherever I'd been sitting. He laid disposable seat covers on the couch, then told me to sit on those instead. I caught him more than once tossing things I'd used straight into the trash, disgust written all over his face. Whenever I confronted Aileen about it, she'd give me the same sheepish explanation. Calvin just worries those things aren't clean, you know? He's afraid it might be bad for you, so he's a little strict about it. I didn't think much of it at the time. Until this afternoon. That note taped to the door finally made everything click. Calvin thought I was the freeloader. I've been ready to teach both Aileen and Calvin a lesson, but Aileen kept pleading with me, desperate. Young Mr. Dickerson, I swear, there won't be a next time. I'll tell Calvin the truth today. He'll never set foot in this house again. Please, for the sake of all those years I spent serving your parents, forgive me just this once. I looked at that humbled expression on her face and sighed. Forget it. I'm dropping it. After the officers left, Aileen let out a long breath of relief, thanking me again and again, practically falling over herself to show her gratitude. After that day, Calvin really did stop coming. Aileen kept working as hard as ever, keeping the house spotless. The one thing she couldn't keep straight was the inventory. A bottle of wine went missing one day, a set of silverware the next, an expensive suit the day after that. Every time I asked, Aileen had an excuse. I'm so sorry. I accidentally knocked over that bottle of wine while I was cleaning. That dinnerware set was getting old. I noticed cracks when I was washing it and was worried you might cut yourself, so I went ahead and threw it out. I took that suit to the dry cleaners and they lost it. Every excuse sounded thin, but her attitude was always apologetic enough that I let it go. I figured that would be the end of it. Then Memorial Day came. After visiting my parents' graves, I decided to drive out to the country estate where they'd spent most of their lives and give the place a proper cleaning. It was their favorite place in the world. The courtyard was full of the flowers my mother had loved most, and every room held souvenirs my father had brought back from his travels. Before she died, my mother had held my hand and told me the house was her and my father's life's work. She made me promise to take care of it. I cherished that estate. Even though being there stirred up memories I wasn't ready to face, I still went back regularly after moving out on my own, wiping down every piece of furniture, trimming every plant in the courtyard. But this time, I froze the moment I reached the front gate. The gate, always locked, was standing wide open. From inside the house came the thud of music turned up loud enough to rattle windows, layered with laughter and shouting. I walked straight in and pushed open the front door. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. The living room was destroyed. Empty bottles, snack wrappers, fruit peels, sunflower seed shells, and cigarette butts covered the coffee table, the couches, the floor. Burn after burn after burn, black cigarette holes scorched straight through the leather sofa, the one that had cost a fortune. My mother's beloved Persian rug was trampled with muddy footprints and splashed with red wine. The keepsakes on the walls had been pulled down, some used as photo props, others smashed and tossed into corners. My fists clenched, so hard my knuckles ached. My parents had lived here for half their lives. Every piece of furniture, every item on display, they had chosen themselves. Whenever I was here, I walked carefully, afraid of bumping even the smallest thing. And now the whole place had been trashed beyond recognition. I scanned the room and found Calvin sitting on the couch directly facing the door. That was when Calvin spotted me in the doorway. The grin dropped off his face. He stood and walked toward me, chin high. Crack. Without a word, he drove his fist straight into my face. You pathetic deadbeat. You actually followed me here? The punch came out of nowhere and locked me in place. Every classmate in the room stared. Calvin? What's going on? He jabbed a finger at me, face twisted with contempt. This right here is Kieran. The little mooch I was just telling you about. Mooching off our place in the city wasn't enough for you? Now you show up here trying to mooch off the villa my mom just bought me? I stared at Calvin in disbelief. Who told you your mom bought this house? Calvin let out a scornful laugh. She told me herself. You're pathetic. You saw that my mom's a company CEO, so you park yourself in our house day after day trying to worm your way into her good graces. Freeloading and engineering alone time with her still isn't enough for you? Now you want to come defile my villa too? Let me spell it out for you. My mom said the only reason she let you stay was because your parents are dead, and she felt sorry for you. So don't push your luck and start dreaming about stealing my position as the real young master of this family. That was what Aileen had been telling him. No wonder Calvin had always treated me like dirt. To him, Aileen was the CEO who owned the villa, and I was the pitiful orphan she'd charitably taken in. All this time, Calvin thought I was the one clinging to his house, scheming to steal his only sin status. Absurd. So that was why things kept disappearing from the city mansion. Aileen had been sneaking them out here for her son. Aileen Chavez, what a piece of work. Since you want to play me for a fool, don't blame me for what comes next. I pulled out my phone right there and called the legal department. Get a team out to my parents' country estate immediately. Before I could finish, Calvin snatched the phone out of my hand and smashed it on the ground. You worthless piece of trash. How are you still keeping up the act? Your parents' estate? This is the villa my mom bought for me. His classmates piled on, sneering and spitting contempt. No wonder everyone else lives in the dorms, and he's the only one who never stays on campus. I thought he was busy with something legit. Turns out he was leeching off Calvin's family and trying to steal his mom.
Disgusting.
I ignored every last one of them, locked my eyes on Calvin and said, voice hard, I'd suggest you call your mother right now and ask her who this estate actually belongs to. Calvin's face darkened. He grabbed me by the collar and yanked me forward. You worthless piece of trash, you want to drag my mom into this? You think I'm stupid? You know she's soft, so you play her. Get her over here, squeeze whatever you can out of her. Then his gaze dropped to my neck, and his eyes lit up. That jade pendant necklace doesn't look cheap. Let me guess, you conned my mom into buying that for you too? Before I could answer, he grabbed it and ripped it off my neck. He moved so fast I had no time to react. The necklace was already in his hand. My face went white. Give it back. The panic in my voice made Calvin look at me with a cold, vicious gleam. This nervous over a necklace? Must have cost my mom a fortune, huh? I couldn't keep the desperation out of my voice. My mother gave it to me. It's not worth much money, but it means everything to me. Give it back. I lunged for it. My mother had nearly killed herself getting me that jade pendant necklace. I was sick all the time as a kid. When I was 10, I collapsed and didn't wake up. They put me in the ICU, unconscious, fading. The doctors told my parents to prepare for the worst. My mother couldn't accept it. She went to a temple to pray for me. In the dead heat of summer, over 100 degrees, she dropped to her knees at the foot of the mountain and bowed her way to the top. One step, one kowtow, all the way up. By the time she reached the summit, her knees were shredded down to white bone, her forehead split open and pouring blood, her mind barely holding on. Only then was she granted the jade pendant necklace. Maybe heaven itself was moved by what she'd done. I woke up. Somehow, impossibly, I opened my eyes. But my mother never recovered. The more you want it, the more I want to break it. Before my fingers could reach it, Calvin hurled the necklace at the ground. A sharp crack. The jade split apart. Pieces scattered across the floor.
No.
The jade my mother had given her life for shattered right in front of me. The pain was so sharp I couldn't breathe. You're an animal. I couldn't take it anymore. I drove my fist straight into Calvin's face. You worthless piece of shit, you hit me? Calvin clutched his face, shrieking. Beat the hell out of this trash. Whoever messes him up the worst, my mom gives them $1 million.
Cash.
That was all it took. Eyes lit up around the room, and they came at me with fists and feet. They had me pinned to the floor, mocking me without the slightest restraint. Calvin grabbed a fistful of my hair and wrenched my head back, the whole crowd egging him on. Regret? I've never regretted a single thing in my life. Go ahead. I'm dying to see how a broke nobody like you is going to make me regret anything. The words had barely left his mouth when a convoy of luxury cars came screaming up the drive and braked hard at the mansion entrance. The laughter in the room died instantly. One by one, heads turned toward the windows as black luxury sedans tore up the gravel drive hard enough to spray dirt across the courtyard. Doors flew open before the engines had even fully stopped. Men in dark suits stepped out first. Then the lawyers. Then the security team. And finally, Aileen Chavez. The moment she saw the state of the living room, the blood on my face, and Calvin standing over me with my shattered jade pendant at his feet, all the color drained from her body. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then she screamed, "Calvin!" She shoved through the crowd so violently 2 students nearly fell over. Her eyes locked onto the broken jade scattered across the floor, and she collapsed to her knees. No, 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 no. Her hands shook as she picked up the cracked pieces one by one, like she was trying to hold water together. With bare fingers. She knew that necklace. She had been there the day my mother came home from that mountain. She had helped bandage her ruined knees. She had held her hand while she cried beside my hospital bed. Aileen looked up at Calvin slowly, horror twisting across her face. "What did you do?" Calvin still hadn't realized how badly he'd destroyed himself. He scoffed and straightened his shirt. "Mom, why are you yelling at me? This little parasite came here causing trouble and—" The slap cracked through the room like a gunshot. Calvin staggered sideways. Every student froze. Aileen was trembling so hard she could barely stand. "You broke it," she whispered. Calvin stared at her in disbelief. "Mom, that was Madame Dickerson's necklace." Silence. Absolute silence. "You told me this villa was yours," one of the students said weakly. Aileen turned toward them with dead eyes. "This estate belongs to the Dickerson family." She pointed at me with shaking fingers. "And he is Karen Dickerson." The room erupted. "No way. Holy shit. The Dickersons? That billionaire family?" Several students physically stepped away from Calvin like touching him might ruin their futures too. Calvin himself just stood there laughing nervously. "What?" Aileen looked at him, and for the first time since I'd known her, there was no softness left in her face. Only disappointment. "You called the owner of this house a freeloader. You beat him in his own home. You stole from him. You destroyed the last thing his mother left him." Calvin's expression cracked apart piece by piece. "Mom, what are you talking about?" One of the lawyers stepped forward and handed me a folder. "Mr. Dickerson, we've already documented the damages." Another lawyer began photographing everything in the room. The ruined rug, the cigarette burns, the shattered antiques, the broken pendant. One of Calvin's friends quietly tried slipping out the back door. Security stopped him instantly. "Sit down." The kid nearly pissed himself. Calvin finally started panicking. "Mom." He grabbed Eileen's arm desperately. "Tell them this is a misunderstanding." But Aileen slowly pulled her arm away from him. For 12 years she had protected him from shame, lied for him, spoiled him, built an entire fantasy where he was some rich heir instead of the son of a housekeeper. And this was what that fantasy had turned him into. A vicious little monster. Her voice came out hollow. "There is no misunderstanding." Calvin stared at her, then at me, then at the lawyers, then at the security guards surrounding the exits. And finally, realization hit him. Real, genuine terror. His legs actually gave out. No, wait. I crouched down in front of him slowly. "You remember what you said earlier?" His breathing turned ragged. "You said you'd never regretted anything in your life." I glanced at the shattered jade on the floor. "You're about to start." The legal team moved fast. Every stolen item Aileen had secretly brought to him from the city mansion was found inside the estate before midnight. The missing wine bottles, the suits, the silverware, watches, artwork, electronics. The total value climbed higher and higher until several of Calvin's classmates looked ready to faint. One of them whispered, "That's felony level." Another immediately turned on Calvin. "You told us your mom owned all this. You said he was some orphan she took in." Calvin snapped hysterically. "How the hell was I supposed to know?" I looked at him coldly. "You never asked." That shut him up, because it was true. He had never once questioned why the freeloading orphan somehow wore tailored clothes worth more than his tuition. Why the staff obeyed me instantly. Why Aileen called me young Mr. Dickerson. He saw what he wanted to see because believing he was superior made him feel good. And now that delusion was collapsing on top of him. One of the lawyers approached me quietly. Mr. Dickerson, would you like us to press charges? Calvin whipped toward me so fast he nearly fell. Kieran, no, please. The arrogance was gone now. Gone completely. Blood dripped from his split lip while panic poured out of him in waves. I didn't know. You destroyed the one thing in this world I can never replace, I said quietly. His face went white. Aileen suddenly stood. Mr. Dickerson. Her voice cracked. I failed your parents. I looked at her. For the first time all night, she looked old. Not like the composed woman who had run our household for years. Just a tired mother who had spent too long feeding poison to her own son. Tears streamed down her face. I thought if Calvin believed he came from something better, he wouldn't suffer the way I did. She looked at him, but all I taught him was cruelty. Calvin grabbed at her desperately. Mom. She stepped back from him too. That hurt him more than any punch ever could. I won't ask for forgiveness, she whispered to me, but I will repay every cent, even if it takes the rest of my life. I stared at the shattered jade in my palm, then at Calvin. Broken, terrified, abandoned by the fantasy he'd built his entire identity on. And suddenly I realized something. Prison would be easy. Real punishment was making him live as exactly what he mocked. Powerless, despised, ordinary. I stood. Drop the criminal charges, I said. Everyone looked stunned. Calvin almost burst into tears from relief. Then I continued. But sue him civilly for everything. The relief vanished instantly. The lawyers nodded. The damages total approximately $8.7 million. One of Calvin's classmates actually gasped out loud. Calvin stared at them in horror. I can't pay that. You should have thought about that before destroying things that didn't belong to you. Then I looked at Aileen. You're dismissed. Her face crumpled. But she nodded. Not arguing. Not begging. Just quietly accepting it. As security escorted everyone out, Calvin suddenly dropped to his knees in front of me. Actually dropped. Kieran, please. His voice broke apart completely. I'm sorry. I looked down at him for a long moment, then past him, to the ruined living room, to my mother's broken necklace in my hand, to the muddy footprints ground into the rug she loved. And I said the only thing left worth saying. You should be. Calvin was still on his knees when the last of his friends were shoved out of the villa by security. Not one of them defended him anymore. Funny how fast loyalty disappeared once money disappeared with it. A few minutes ago they had been laughing while he held me down. Now every single one of them avoided eye contact, like standing too close to him might infect them. One girl even hissed before leaving, "You said your family owned this place." Calvin looked up desperately. I didn't know. Shut up, another snapped. My dad works with the Dickerson Group. Do you realize what kind of trouble we're in now? The door slammed behind them, and suddenly Calvin was alone. Really alone. I stood there silently while security dragged the trash bags of stolen property into the center of the room one by one. The silverware, the watches, the suits, the wine. Every lie dumped at his feet. Aileen stood off to the side crying quietly, but I barely looked at her. My attention stayed on Calvin, because for the first time since I'd met him, he finally looked small, not arrogant, not superior, not untouchable, just a spoiled boy realizing the world would not bend around him anymore. Then the head of security walked over and handed me something. Calvin's phone. We recovered this from the upstairs bedroom, he said. The moment Calvin saw it, panic exploded across his face. Wait. Too late. The security chief unlocked it and handed it to me. At first, I only saw photos. Pictures of himself posing in my house, my cars, my wine cellar, my father's study. Then I opened the group chats, and the room went dead quiet. Message after message after message. Bro, this orphan dude literally lives in our house like a stray dog, lol. My mom's too soft-hearted to kick him out. I swear he looks at me like he wants my life. I made him sit on disposable covers today, skull. Poor people smell weird no matter how much they shower. Then videos. Videos of him mocking me while I wasn't around, spraying disinfectant after I touched things, laughing while his friends called me house pet. One clip showed him sitting in my father's chair with his feet on the desk. You know what's funny? He laughed to the camera. Guys like him should honestly be grateful people like us let them exist around us. The lawyer's expressions turned icy. Eileen covered her mouth like she might throw up. Calvin looked seconds from passing out. I slowly lowered the phone. You really believed all this, huh? His lips trembled. You know what the funniest part is? I stepped closer. You spent all this time looking down on me because you thought I was poor. I looked around the destroyed villa. But the only reason you ever got to touch any of this, I leaned down slightly, was because my family pitted yours. That landed harder than any punch. I watched it happen in real time. His entire ego, everything he'd built himself around, shattered. Because deep down, Calvin never actually cared about hard work or character or dignity. He cared about feeling above somebody. And now he finally understood the truth. He had never been above anyone.
He was just a guest.
A spoiled guest who mistook kindness for ownership. He started crying then. Not dramatic movie tears. Ugly ones. Humiliating ones. I'm sorry. You're sorry now because reality finally showed up. I turned to security. Throw him out. Calvin's head snapped up. What? You heard me. 2 guards grabbed his arms immediately. Panic consumed him all over again. No, wait, Kieran, please. They dragged him toward the front door while he stumbled and fought to stay upright. And for the first time, he got treated exactly how he had treated me. Like he didn't belong there. Like he was filth staining someone else's home. Right before security hauled him outside, I called after him calmly. Oh, and Calvin? He turned, shaking. The locks on the city mansion were changed tonight. His face emptied completely. You said freeloading dogs should sleep on the street, remember? The doors closed in his face. Eileen broke down sobbing. Please, he's still my son. I finally looked at her fully. For 12 years my family treated you with trust. My gaze dropped to the shattered jade pendant in my hand. And you repaid us by raising someone who thought kindness was weakness. She couldn't answer, because there was nothing left to say. A week later, the videos leaked. Not from me. From his own friends. The same people who used to cheer him on suddenly turned him into a joke across the entire university. Fake rich kid. Discount heir.
Temu billionaire.
Every smug video he'd ever recorded spread online, including the ones mocking poor people. Especially those. Students who once sucked up to him openly laughed when he walked through campus. The girls who used to follow him around pretended not to know him. Even professors looked disgusted. Then came the civil lawsuit. The numbers hit social media within days. Millions in damages. The estate. The theft. The destroyed antiques. The harassment. The assault. By the end of the month, Calvin had dropped out of school. Nobody knew where he went after that. Some said he got a tiny apartment on the edge of the city. Some said he worked 3 jobs. Some said he spent weeks hiding indoors because people kept recognizing him. I didn't care enough to find out. The only thing I knew for certain was that the next time Calvin looked at someone with less money than him, he would remember exactly how it felt to be thrown out like nothing.